Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your Master of Fun and Wonder, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your existential Mr. Rogers, and your Chancellor of Cheerfulness, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here coming at you, Robcasting, from the Robservatory, with Robservations, episode number 333, coming at you, you imagination connoisseurs of this, the Post-Geek Singularity. Great to have you here. It's a Friday. We got Birds of Prey in the theaters now. We got the Oscars this weekend. Have you filled out your Oscar ballots? Have you put some money down? Are you an Oscar prognosticator? Are you going to win? I don't know. We'll see. You'll have to tell me on Monday. Anyway, it's great to be here for another Robservations episode, the show about something, of course. And, it's wonderful to be here. I'm trying it. For those of you who are asking, Tallulah and Gilbert, I'm giving them a little bit of a rest, a little bit rambunctious lately, pulling out my mic cables and all that. Maybe I should duct tape it all down. So anyway, I have an interesting topic that might not be exactly what you think, but to start out though, my first topic at hand, something I thought was, probably something fairly obvious. And this comes to us from Daily Variety. Movies with theatrical releases more likely to get streamed, the study shows. Really? I mean, I would think that of all the things that might be considered totally obvious, this has to be one of them. But anyway, I just thought I would cover this. Memo to Netflix, HBO Max, Disney Plus, and the rest of the screaming scrum. Well, don't forget, come on, you don't want to say Peacock, and now CBS, Viacom, Paramount's going to have a streaming service. I mean, come on. People were more likely to stream a movie when they know it had been released in theaters. By the way, this was in Variety today. Brent Lang wrote this article, if you didn't see that already. And apparently, according to a new survey by Ernst & Young that was commissioned by the National Association of Theater Owners, not like they didn't have a vested interest in these results. But look, let's delve into this more. Clearly, given the National Association of Theater Owners moniker, it has a dog in the fight between the exhibition business and the digital forces upending Hollywood. Those pesky digital forces. However, even though the study was paid for by the theater business's main lobbying arm, its findings are interesting and point to the value of a standard rollout in multiplexes. 62% of the study's respondents reported that if a movie had appeared in cinemas, they were more willing to check it on their streaming services. Only 3% of respondents said they were less likely to stream a movie if they knew it was released in a movie theater. A theatrical release creates more of a conversation, says Phil Contrino, Director of Media and Research at NATO. The study comes at a time of great change in the movie business. It is being released as Disney has launched a streaming offering with Disney Plus, attracting 28.6 million subscribers in the process, as we've been reporting all week, and as Warner Media and Comcast are readying the debut of their own Netflix challengers in HBO Max and Peacock. Okay, I'm glad you got... Because, look, anytime we can talk about Universal and NBC's service called Peacock, I gotta say it. Because, look, I get it. It's the Peacock network. I understand. But, it is kind of funny that of all the titles in all the gin joints in all the world, they went with Peacock. Netflix has historically had little use for theatrical runs, but the company has tried to find a middle ground in recent years, partly at the urging of top directors such as Martin Scorsese and Alfonso Cuarón. Films such as The Irishman, Roma, and Marriage Story have had limited exclusive releases in theaters before debuting on Netflix. Major chains refused to carry those films because they did not adhere to a traditional theatrical window of roughly 3 months before bowing on streaming. The report does not make a distinction between the type of theatrical release a movie receives, Contrino notes. He argues, however, that Netflix's strategy is flawed. Netflix is still trying to get the halo effect that goes with theatrical, but they're not going all the way. If you look at what they had this Oscar season, a lot of people would look at The Irishman and Marriage Story and say they'd left money on the table. The study polled 2,000 515 respondents who saw at least one movie in theaters over the last 12 months, as well as 505 responders who did not see any movies in theaters last year. It found that streaming services are complementary, not cannibalistic, when it comes to moviegoing. People who visited a movie theater 9 times or more annually streamed more content than respondents who visited a movie theater only once or twice. Respondents with more than 9 trips to the movies saw an average of 12 hours of streaming content per week, compared to the 7 hours that respondents who only saw 1 or 2 movies a year watched on average. Of those who didn't visit a movie theater in the last 12 months, nearly half didn't stream any online content. The disruption talk is overstated, says Contrino. What's being disrupted is the way people consume content in the home. Contrino believes that streaming is altering the media landscape. It's just siphoning off broadcast television viewers and encouraging consumers to cut the cord. That is true. The study suggests younger viewers weaned on YouTube aren't abandoning the multiplexes en masse. Consumers between the ages of 13 to 17 streamed the most content per week and saw the most movies in theaters. People between the ages of 18 to 37 watched the fewest movies in theaters while streaming 8.5 hours of content a week. Blah, blah, blah. It's just lazy to say younger viewers are abandoning movies. Adding the coming launch of these streaming services means it's only going to get harder for something to break through. Okay. Here's how I feel about this. First of all, when I worked in home entertainment, when I began my illustrious career working as a home video retailer, and I say that I began when I was 13 years old at Seattle's Video Space. Basically, they wouldn't, after my bar mitzvah, I had a VCR, the first kid on the block to have one, and I would hang out at this video store, Video Space, which was at the time one of the first video stores in the nation. The owner was Weston Nishimura, who later founded the Video Software Dealers Association of America. And I got my job because 2 nice guys, well, Bud Warner and Steve Pitcher, I hung out there all the time. They're like, well, since you're hanging out here all the time, why don't you, we'll give you a job. So my first job in home video was when I was 13, working at Video Space in Bellevue. It was connected to Magnolia Hi-Fi at the time. But what I learned then, back then Hollywood was like, my God, home video is going to destroy the movie business. But when I was 13, I truly was Oracle at Delphi-like in my understanding and acumen of being able to prognosticate the future of Hollywood. It's still the same. I just wish I was recognized more for it. But I even said as a 13-year-old kid, I'm like, you know what? You know what home video is going to do? You know what taking movies home is going to do to the world? It's going to turn the whole planet, not that they weren't already before, they're all going to turn into movie fanatics. Hollywood home video is not going to ruin movies. It's going to make people go to the movies even more. It feeds off itself. What are people going to rent and buy when they come out on home video? Movies they've already seen. Nobody was waiting to sit there and go, you know, I'm not going to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark until, damn, it's out on home video. That's what I'm going to wait for. No. Movies are still cultural events. They still are. And this year we had a lot of them. There was look at the Oscars. I mean, whether you're talking Parasite, whether you're talking Jojo Rabbit, whether you're talking Avengers Endgame, there was a lot of water cooler movies. I know everyone says, oh, the movie theater is just full of superhero fare. No, that's not true. Great animated movies, and yes, movies that Netflix debuted, even though they gave them a theatrical window. The Irishman, Marriage Story, Klaus. These are films that Netflix is making. More people are jumping into the fray. But I don't think that we have to worry about movies going away anytime soon because people like the theatrical experience. As long as the sound and picture are overwhelmingly great, no more of this cut down the brightness of your bulbs, people. We want to see movies the way they're meant to be seen, bright and colorful and awesome. You know, I mean, I don't like bad projection. There are a few things I hate less or hate more than bad projection. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So anyway, of course, people who go to the movies are more likely to stream theatrical movies or movies that are in theaters. Because going into movie theaters, there's something still to be said, and I know, as a low-budget independent filmmaker who hasn't made a movie that's seen the light of a projector bulb in quite some time, you know, my movies have either gone through, oh, that's not true. You know, The Hills Run Red, which I produced, it came out 11 years ago. It did see the light of projector bulbs at various festivals and things like that, and hopefully Tango Shalom will see the light of a projector bulb. And you know what? Now that I think about it, Paradox played at the Arena Theater in Hollywood back in 2015. That was a little low-budget science fiction. And what am I saying? Skyfighter that just dropped on the Dust Network that I edited, that was in a theater at a film festival. It's going to be at a film festival in Hollywood next week. Come meet me there if you want. It's at the Holly Shorts Festival. I don't know when. You'll have to look it up, but Skyfighter, come check it out. So yes, people are more likely to stream movies that are played theatrically than movies that haven't. Why? Because movies that play theatrically still are anointed. Every filmmaker, as much as I worked in the direct-to-video low-budget realm, every movie you make, you hope will see the light of a projector bulb. And people want to go see. I mean, look, Michael Bay's Six Underground dropped on Netflix. Obviously, you watch the first 15 minutes of that movie. It's insane. The car chase through Florence, it just made me cringe the whole time. I loved seeing all the dead bodies ravaged and all that. It was great stuff. But I think more people would have found it. Now it's just become, as all Netflix properties do, they just become buried. Like once you watch them, they're just yet another thumbnail before you click on it. And I think more people would watch Six Underground if it was a theatrically released motion picture. Anyway, just a thought. Now, I'm always looking for interesting topics to discuss on this show. And as many people know, I am a huge advocate of movie crews. I love nothing better than the people that act. I love the people that actually make movies. I'm talking about the production team, your crew for principal photography. There is nothing more inspiring than to work with a great movie crew. And I don't just mean the people on set. I mean the people in the offices. I mean the drivers, the teamsters, and all the on-set people. The grip and electric department, the camera department. And I really believe that if you unleashed various crews on the world, we could solve the world's problems. I don't think I've ever seen problems get solved faster than problems that need to be solved by production. I'm not kidding. Whatever you need. Whatever you need. A movie crew, somebody in the office, somebody on set, somebody will solve. Look, we can't solve nuclear disarmament or the healthcare crisis. Or maybe we could. I mean, come on. But I don't think I've ever seen faster problem solvers than people on movie crews. And as I said, whenever I've spoken to colleges or someplace like that, film school classes, some of the things that people ask me is like, what is the most important thing a producer can do? Well, if you're a working producer and you're actually producing a film and you're physically involved in the production, not somebody who just found the money or the property, but if you're physically involved, if you're in the office, there are two departments that I've always told people that are the most important departments on any movie set. You got to square them away before anything. The first is catering. And no, I'm not being glib. I'm not trying to be funny. The catering on your movie set is one of the most important decisions you're going to make. Now, I don't mean crafty. Crafty is different. It can be the same, but craft services is a person who is on set and has snacks and fruits and stuff available, coffee, hot coffee, drinks for the whole crew. So you can, between setups or whatever, people can rush over the crafty table and get stuff, donuts, whatever. Catering are the people that provide meals, usually 3. You get breakfast, lunch, maybe dinner. Because the traditional day on a movie set is 12 hours, usually 12 and a half hours if you include lunch or whatever. So basically you got people for 12 hours a day. It is very important that they are taken care of. When your crew is taken care of, they know from the first day of production. If you have given them great catering, and they'll know from that first meal, they'll even know for breakfast. Normally, you'll either have like a food truck or the caterers are there serving breakfast to the crew that arrives early, because not all crew arrives at the same time. Actors don't necessarily arrive at the same time. But the other department that you should never, ever, ever scrimp or try and cut corners on or try and figure out a way to somehow save money. The single most important department that you might not think of on a movie shoot right away are your hair and makeup people. And again, I am not being glib. I'm not being glib. I am not trying to make fun or any of those things. And I'll tell you why. Your actors, both your male and female, your actors and your actresses, the people that they spend the most time with, other than on set, and when they're not in their trailer, are the hair and makeup people. Great hair and makeup people and great costume people, but hair and makeup people develop, especially on longer shoots. I've worked on movies like Chronicles of Narnia or Superman Returns, where you shot for 150 days. You're in country for a year sometimes. And the relationships that the hair and makeup people have with talent is vital to the success of your movie. And I would say that especially actresses, they got to look good. That's what they want. They want to know that when and actors too, but actresses, I'll tell you something. To be honest, I on the hierarchy of who's more important in terms of hair and makeup people, I'll flat out say it. It's your actresses. You've got to make sure your actresses are taken care of, and hair and makeup people are the front line of defense. And you have to make sure that your actresses are taken care of. Now, I know this, but even myself, I would think that, okay, as somebody who understands that, even I read something today in the Hollywood Reporter that I was surprised by, and I thought, you know what? I don't know if I would have thought of that. I don't know if I'm gearing up for my next production, which hopefully will be later this year. I might have overlooked that. And it was something that I thought was really, really, really important. And I'm going to share it with you, and I thought I'd make it the main topic of today's conversation. I know it's not my usual bill of fare. It's not Star Wars or Star Trek or something like that. But I did think it was important because it speaks to something larger in our society, as many things do on movie sets and how they work. And that is the fact that there's all kinds of talk on this show. One of my my philosophical underpinnings of the show, as anybody who's watched for any length of time knows, is that I believe that the more people have a voice, the more stories we're getting from different kinds of people, all the disparate human beings that are on this planet, the better off we are. So I am a fan of diverse voices, wherever they're coming from. Now, I am not necessarily a social justice warrior. I believe in social justice, but it's not. I think that the way we make change is to make change. And I think one of the things that I never considered was this article that I read today in the Hollywood Reporter. And it made me stop, and it gave me pause. And that is this. And let me see. Let me get up to it's Hollywood's black hair problem on set. And I thought, how interesting is that? This is something that I you know what? It just never occurred to me. But it's something that should, because as we have more people, more voices that haven't been heard, or more diverse casts, whether we're going to have people from all over the world appearing more and more in films. But that requires not just saying, oh, I hired a person of color, or I hired this person or that person. There's other considerations. I mean, the optics of diversity are fine, and I'm all about that. But there are also things that come along with that also have to be considered. And if you're a movie producer, or you need to take this into consideration, and when I read this article, I was like, I had never thought about this. And now I did. Now I have, because I read this article. Hollywood's black hair problem on set. We've all cried in our trailers. This is from Sharia Dury and Lindsay Weinberg, and it was published today at 9 a.m. African-American stars say productions don't provide makeup artists and hairstylists who are familiar with natural textures and dark skin tones. It's a real disservice to actors of color. You do not want to ever hear your actresses say that you are doing them a disservice by having the wrong makeup people. And this is something that I think it is quite interesting. Let's go on. When it comes to black hair, it's the best of times and still for some, the worst of times. On the upside, last July, the California legislature passed the Crown Act, Create a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair, which bans discrimination on the basis of hair textures. I didn't know that, but I wholeheartedly approve. In August, Hair Love, about an African-American dad learning to care for his daughter's curls, which is where I got the thumbnail for this today's show, screened before Sony's Angry Birds 2, garnered 13 million YouTube views, and nabbed an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Short. That's this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. I know what I'm voting for on my Oscar ballot. The reach is pretty insane, says writer, co-director Matthew A. Cherry. We started as a Kickstarter campaign. I remember that Kickstarter campaign. That's another lesson to learn, you budding producers. A Kickstarter campaign for your animated short could lead you to the Oscars if your idea is good enough. And yet, by the way, here's that picture. Here's the thumbnail picture. This is from Hair Love, nominated for an Academy Award for Best Short. And yet, on Hollywood productions and photo shoots, many black actors continue to face challenges with their hair. In November, actress Gabrielle Union, an exec producer on Hair Love, claimed she was fired from NBC's America's Got Talent after being told that her hairstyles were too black. Other actresses point to this discrimination that occurs pretty much every time they sit in a hair and makeup chair. There just aren't enough union stylists in Hollywood who know how to work with natural hair and darker skin. We've all cried in our trailers, said Lacey Mosley, an actress on Pop TV's Florida Girls, who recently posted on Twitter about a bad makeup experience on a film set. I'm a dark-skinned actress in Hollywood, and like 3 union makeup artists know how to do my makeup, and they're all busy as hell. Ladies and gentlemen, let this be a lesson. Lacey Mosley has a great point. If you're going to hire her, make sure she has hair and makeup people that will do her justice. And more importantly, she has to know that they're going to do her justice, because when she walks out on set, you do not want her worried about how she looks. You want your actresses to look like $1 million. And more than that, you want them to feel like they look like $1 million, because then they can concentrate on their performance, which makes the movie better, which makes you as a producer happier in the long run. And again, this was something that I had not considered. You know, it's you hire hair and makeup people and you assume that they know how to do everybody, young people, old people. I mean, it didn't occur to me that, of course, black actors, of course, cinematographers have experience, like understanding, like if you have a white and a black actor in the frame together, sometimes you have to come up with a lighting scheme that works for both. People are different, you know, and I know we all are created equal, but that doesn't mean we don't all have different attributes unique to us. And those attributes should be considered, just like they should be considered everywhere. Now, is this somebody getting preferential treatment? Not at all. This is a pragmatic necessity of movie sets. That when you have actors of color, and, you know, black actors aren't just the only brown people in the world as black and brown people. You've got all kinds of people, everybody from indigenous Americans to the Australian Aboriginals to East Indian people, all around the world. There's a bunch of people that look different than, say, myself. And now, moving forward, I will be more mindful of that. It's something I didn't consider. We've all cried in our trailers, and I don't want that to ever happen on a movie set. Mosley goes on, and she sees a problem stemming from a lack of union makeup artists and hairstylists that have a wide range of experience. Everyone in the industry knows that there are certain barriers of entry when it comes to becoming a union makeup artist, Mosley explains. Unfortunately, a lot of people who spend the most time with black and brown skin find it difficult to get these opportunities because the unionized makeup and hair industry is nepotistic in nature. Friends are hiring friends, and when it's an overwhelmingly white industry, 9 times out of 10, those people's friends are white as well. She's absolutely correct. And I think as more and more people of color are making inroads into becoming massive stars of tentpole movies, I think we're going to see, again, I don't necessarily think there's say, systemic racism. I just think that there hasn't been a need for it, and that need is going to start to get greater and greater, and it will be filled. And I think all makeup artists, no matter what color you happen to be, all makeup artists would behoove themselves to becoming more familiar as we have more global audiences and more global actors and actresses filling our films up, that it's pragmatic, it's academic, it needs to be done. Adds Mosley, this isn't specifically for vanity. It's the fact that systemic racism is so deeply ingrained in our industry that we are so forgotten about all the time that this is normal. She's absolutely right. And, Hollywood obviously was a very predominantly white industry, especially when it came to actors. But again, that is changing. And as I talk about on the show all the time, there's an evolution of culture that is happening. And I myself, I have to say, when I read this article, that it never occurred to me. I never thought about that. And I will always be mindful, just like a good producer should be mindful of getting their crew great catering. You've got to make sure that all of your actors and actresses are comfortable. And if you have to bring in a makeup artist, you have got your makeup team, and you have to bring in a makeup artist specifically to do people that have different hair or darker complexions, you got to do it. Put it in the budget. Make it happen. Because, if your actresses are crying on set or crying in their trailers, that's on you. And that should never happen. It should never happen. Anyway, Makeup Artists and Hairstylists Guild business rep Randy Sayer says the Guild welcomes any and all discussions of diversity within our entertainment industry and looks to renew our ongoing conversation with the producer employers to ensure that the workforce that is hired reflects the community in which we live and work. We can all start to make simple, meaningful, and demonstrative changes in the way we crew our departments, treat our co-workers, and relate to others. To be inclusive, diverse, and forward-thinking as possible. Diversity may be humanity's greatest asset. Our workplaces must reflect the best part of our society and our communities. I totally agree with that. And when it comes to hair and makeup, by the way, hair and makeup people, while, yeah, they're usually beholden to the producers that hire them, but I'll tell you something. Hair and makeup people, and any actor or actress will tell you this because they have ongoing relationships with their hair and makeup people. No one is more protective of actors and actresses on set than the hair and makeup folks. At least that's been my experience. And I think it's great. Sayer also says the union's barrier to entry isn't that high. 30 days of union work within a 1-year period, no test, no swimsuit competition, no barrier because of gender or ethnicity or age or privilege. In terms of increasing Guild members' facility with different hair and skin types, Sayer points to free training provided every other weekend in makeup and hairstyling techniques, including a recent hands-on barbering class that featured cutting, clipping, and grooming techniques for all hair types, open to 100 of our makeup artists and hairstylists. Empire star Taraji P. Henson is tired of biting my damn tongue on the subject. She tells the Hollywood Reporter, describing a magazine shoot in which a stylist inexperienced with black hair damaged hers with a root booster. She thought about asking for a different stylist, but then I would have been difficult, right? As she said. On another shoot, she says a stylist bought a cheap wig and didn't even know how to style it. She finally brought in her own stylist at her own expense. But you see what I mean, she says. Insecure actress Natasha Rothwell says, on some projects, her own black-led show accepted, she wakes up early to prep her own hair, anticipating that the stylists on set won't know how to do it. Early in her career, buying her own supplies often cost all of what she made in a day. For white co-stars, Rothwell says they can wake up, roll out of bed, and don't have to worry about what's in their bag. Look, I when I first read this, I was kind of shocked. Because, you want to make sure that your especially your cast, especially the ladies, they're taken care of. You got to make sure they should not be doing this. This is something. Look, you pay for your makeup artists. You pay for their kits. Everything they bring. It's part of the budget. You pay for that. And as she says, you do a disservice for actors of color. It's a real disservice to actors of color who are effectively doing someone else's job and not getting paid for it, she adds. There's nothing more dehumanizing than sitting in a hair and makeup chair and watching your co-stars go through the works and leave, and you're still there because someone's moving very slowly because they're very scared. It's you feeling like a problem to be solved. Rothwell says if a black actor is number one on the call sheet, they can negotiate and get a star request to choose their own stylist, which is how several black stylists have broken into the industry and accrued enough days to join the union. You have these big names, celebrities of color, who at that level can't imagine doing the hustle, Rothwell adds. Henson believes it's crucial to put aside egos and respect actors' wishes. If you knew how to do it, great. If you don't, pass it to somebody who does. It has nothing to do with pride or ego, Henson says. I'm not saying you have to be black to know how to do that hair, but you've got to know what the hell you're doing. Henson's advice to networks, studios, and magazines: when an actress of color requests a hairstylist, listen to them. They are not being difficult. I could not agree more with this article. And, I chose to share this article because, one, I learned something that I thought this is incredibly helpful advice, and I totally agree with it. And it's something that I completely would have overlooked had I not read this article. And I figured, maybe I was so taken with learning something new. My mom used to say that when I came home it was the second grade, that I had to say around the dinner table every single thing that I learned at school today. I was like, did you know this? Did you know that? And my parents were like, yeah, we learned that in second grade too. We know. But eventually my mom told me that I had to shut up and not talk at the dinner table. But anyway, I thought this was something important to pass along. And it's one of the things where, while we're all talking about diversity and social justice and all those things, there's also a practicality to other people's experience. It's not just about listening to them. It's also about facilitating what we as different kinds of people need in our lives. And the fact is, my hair is different than, say, someone else my same age who is from a different ethnic background. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration I would never have a photo shoot with a black actress and not hire a hairstylist that understood that actress's hair. I wouldn't do it. Anyway, I just thought this was just a different bill of fare, something different to talk about today that I thought was relatively interesting and important. And it's Friday. I wanted to change it up. I don't have anything more to say about Star Trek Picard, and I thought this was great. Plus, I really like that animated short, and I thought, good for them, and I hope they win. But this is a subject matter that is important. And there you go. Movie magic, ladies and gentlemen. Movie magic. So, one of the things I have to go back, and I missed a super chat yesterday, and I don't like when I do that. I don't like when I miss a super chat. Let me go back, and he sent in 2, and I didn't hit it. So this was from from the Wes Moody podcast. The Commodore in Star Trek Picard says, the future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. Ugh. Yes, cringe, arg, Yeah, I thought that was not good. As anyone who has watched Star Trek Picard saw in the last episode, we had apparently a Vulcan, or a Romulan, a Vulcan wearing sunglasses. Tamlin Tamita, formerly of Babylon 5, it was great to see her in the role, by the way. I thought that was really cool casting. But she's wearing, and they're not even like space sunglasses. They look like the Ray-Bans that Gilbert ate. My favorite Ray-Bans. And, yeah, that was pretty funny. So thank you. Thank you for saying that. Now, because the super chats are smaller, I'm going to put these glasses on so I can read better. Willow sends in a hang on, let me see. Willow sends in a super chat. What is the law on human experimentation and genetic enhancement in the Federation? I was under the impression, just when I thought I couldn't talk about Picard, I was under the impression that it's illegal, but in unnatural selection, nobody seemed to have any objections toward genetically engineering superpowered kids. Ooh, good pull on that. Well, Willow, I think that the Federation probably does, but does Federation law? Again, I don't know. I mean, it's why were they experimenting with the Genesis device? But I think that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little loosey-goosey, but you're absolutely right. It's a good question. I don't know if I've ever seen a law. I think somebody should make the Federation laws about this. I don't know. It's a good question. Alexander Wilson is here. Alexander sends in a tip and says, Ava Berkovsky, the cinematographer on HBO's Insecure, that's Issa Rae's show, who also, I think, narrates. Does she narrate that short film? Was praised. Ava Bertovsky, the cinematography on HBO's Insecure, was praised for the cinematography on the show for its lighting of people of color. When I was in film school, no one ever talked about lighting non-white people, said Berkovsky. Yeah, I mean it's a problem. You know, people's great cinematography is all about light, and you know, even people in the of the same race, we're all the human race, but of different colors. Even there's a huge wide variety of people. Some people are ruddy faced, you know, just like Lupita Nyong'o, who I firmly believe is one of the absolute most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. She's very dark skinned. So if she's standing next to somebody who's lighter skinned, it's hard to balance out that light. So Alexander, you're absolutely right. Alexander says also, there are these general rules about lighting people of color, like throw green light or amber light at them. It's weird. I guess that's what Berkovsky said. These rules are a start, but they're far from a complete picture. Also, Berkovsky was saying that. You know what? I've not read that. I would love to do that. I'd love to read that. But yeah, I mean, this is something that you don't really think about, but it's true. And great cinematographers, especially what happens is, you know, you one of the things about lighting faces is you want to be able to see someone's face. And sometimes light can obliterate features, and it can be very, very difficult. I've been on sets where that's definitely has been a problem. But you know, people are learning, and that's what I mean by an evolutionary process. People are getting better all the time. They're learning more things, and while it's not going to happen tomorrow, it is great to have these conversations, and it is great to advance these issues. I think it's really, really important. And I think to a larger extent, this is a very specific issue, but the idea is, I mean, let's apply it to our society at large. The more mindful we are of different people's experiences, it's not so much about I've never liked the idea of being diverse in a superficial way. You have to understand it's all about a person's experience, their whole life experience. It's not just because of their color or because of their economic background or because of their sexuality or because of how they feel inside that they've had to lead a whole life. It's not just because they're a different color and they've got because, you know, you're this color, we have to treat you this way. No, it's a lifetime of experience that gives somebody a whole different point of view. So it's that has to be taken into consideration. And the fact that if you haven't grown up with certain things or you haven't been treated certain ways, like, look, I mean, I feel bad when I meet kids who come from broken homes from a very early age. I mean, my parents eventually separated, but not until I was, you know, in college. So I had a great upbringing. There was no arguing or screaming and yelling in my house. And my parents they seemed to be the best of friends, and they were still friends. They were never not friends. And I feel a certain sense of privilege that I grew up in a household that was relatively, well, if you don't talk about my sister, relatively calm. And yet I met lots of people in my life that envied that didn't know what that was like. So, you know, it's all just getting to know each other and respecting each other's experiences. It's not just about hiring people of a certain color. It's about listening to what they have to say. And I think that's something that people tend to forget. Anyway, so I have letters, people. I have letters today. And let's see what they are. Oh boy, there's a lot of them. You know what? I didn't read an Ian Samuels letter today. And Ian Samuels, I'm going to start with an Ian Samuels letter because why not? Why not? Why not start with an Ian Samuels letter? Here's a good one. This is an Ian Samuels letter about Star Wars. Rob, Duel of the Fates could have worked with a couple of changes. Scrap the stupid bits. Don't try and squeeze Chewie into an X-Wing, and don't give Kylo a stupid Beskar Phantom of the Opera mask. Then fix the big plot hole previously mentioned. Change the lines. Have Rey tell Kylo that she cannot forgive him for joining those who hunted down and killed her parents, the Knights of Ren, and that he might well have killed them himself. Don't kill Luke in Star Wars The Last Jedi. The main character, or the character Tor Valum, is supposed to be thousands of years old and is stated as being the master of Darth Sidious. Just use Plagueis. Retcon or take out all the Leia stuff except the Holo message. More poignant as she has died. The stuff on Coruscant having it under the First Order is like a sci-fi version of revolutionary France, only with Finn, Poe, and Rose leading the revolution. Even having a barricade scene that would make it a sci-fi version of Les Miserables would have been epic. They kind of had that. That was definitely in the script. Otherwise, leave the rest as it is. Now that I've had the time to absorb it, I see where it could have been fixed, and it would have been better than what we got. Yes, Ian, I agree with you. It absolutely would have. But, you know, it's strange. Speaking of that, here's another one on the same subject. We can't get over the Duel of the Fates script, can we? People are going to be talking about this forever. This one comes to us from Hillbill Russ. He actually shared a video on the basic mistakes made by screenwriters that shows why, in his opinion, the Star Wars sequel trilogy was doomed to fail. Well, I'm not going to play the video, but I will read the letter. Rob, here's a quick link to a brief video that was published in 2016 that speaks volumes about the scriptwriting 101 process in general. Anyone can see right away where the recent Star Wars trilogy and final film were already off track. I also just saw the Duel of the Fates artwork up and around that you described, and wow, very interesting, as you always say. Well, I'm in the live chat, people. Here is a link to his letter, and it has the video on the Burnettwork website explaining this, where they are coming from. So check that out. Don't do it now. And here's another one, because people cannot stop talking about this Duel of the Fates script. No, you know what? I already read that one. That one was read already, so we don't have to read that one again. I'll read the next one. Well, I'm trying to catch up. Oh, this one. Well, here's another one. This is from Thomas Bertoli. Thomas writes in about Dr. Doolittle. Hello again, Rob, our esteemed Starship Captain, who on a constant basis gives us a beautiful, endearing look into the many things we love, or even find most lacking in film and television during each show. Thank you for that, kind sir. I'm a lifelong fan. I'm also, hello, fellow imagination connoisseurs. I do hope this day finds you all well, so kick your feet up and take a drink, or maybe a few. You might need it. First off, shall we just blame Geordie, moderator Geordie Lyons, for daring me to write this? Or you can thank him in the chat. Let's do this, shall we? Shall we? Dr. Doolittle is, first and foremost, a lackluster cluster fuckfest of Animal Kingdom orgy with talking CGI animals. It is nowhere near the level of those movies that have come before with the same name. Unlike Dr. Doolittle movies that preceded it, this film lacks that same heartfelt interaction with the animals that left us feeling good. At the end of these movies, we cared. We do not care for this appalling remake. Its bad CGI, however, isn't its only issue. Robert Downey Jr., who just came off Avengers Endgame and who we know can act, seems to be only collecting a paycheck here. His own wife was a producer on the movie. His name alone wasn't enough to draw a hopefully energetic movie-going crowd. No one seems to care for this version of a character with an accent similar to his Sherlock Holmes. Sure, he's English in the movie, but in many ways, Robert Downey Jr. seems quite over the top. So what's the movie about? Good question. The movie starts off as the story of a boy who nearly kills a squirrel. Then it's about how animals implore a man who talks to animals to get the hell out of his house because he's lonely and doesn't care for humans after his wife dies at sea. But when he's at sea, it turns out the queen is sick and he has to save her with a cure in a faraway land. That becomes an adventure with talking CGI animals, and it's bad. It's almost so bad you just wait for the train wreck. I didn't even want to sit through this movie. I nearly walked out because I didn't feel any investment in the character of Doolittle or any of the CGI animals who all seem to have issues. What could have and should have been awe-filled adventure quickly turns into a horrendous one. More concerned about fart jokes than being a good movie. Billed as a family film, I heard a child ask her own parent, "Mommy, why is he sticking his hand up the dragon's butt?" and I couldn't help but want to crack up laughing. Yes, you read that right. The climax of this movie seems to be helping a dragon with a bad case of the shits who has ass issues. And how does Dr. Doolittle aid said dragon? By fisting it and then removing the bagpipes from its problematic rear end. Let's go save the queen. The plot is quite boring and does little to help this movie. You just don't feel any investment for the cast, including said CGI animals. This is the most unwatchable movie made, starring Robert Downey Jr., directed by Stephen Gaghan. You know what? I might have read that before, but I thought it was worth sharing again. Why not? Because it was funny. I didn't see Dr. Doolittle. And you know, it proves... Look, I have never believed in the movie star system necessarily. I don't think just by putting a big star in a movie, it's going to be successful. We have too many examples of that. This being the latest. I mean, I remember when Cable Guy came out and it underperformed. People were like, why did this happen? Why did it not make lots of money? You know, what's going on here? And, well, you know, it's because the movie itself has to be good. Stars, of course, movie stars are important. You need somebody that investors will give you money to make a movie with. But if it's not done well, and if the actor is not well served by the material, it's not going to be a good film. There's nothing you can do to save it. And you can't keep throwing, if it's not working. I've never understood. I mean, I know they have to pull the plug. They throw bad money after or good money after bad because they have to get it out and they don't pull the plug. But I think maybe sometimes it might be better to pull the plug. Although I know that movies will earn, look, that movie will be somewhere forever. It'll be streaming. People can watch it forever. And I think, well, okay. This next one comes from Garth. Hopefully not of Izar. Let's see. Dear Robert, this is a follow-up to an earlier letter. It seems like it's time to return the Star Wars franchise to George Lucas. At no time has this become more obvious than with the recent revelations provided from the leaked script for Duel of the Fates. It's become clear Disney's plan has always been to monetize the 40-plus-year-old franchise, and in doing so, they've ignored George Lucas's past experiences of making the original and prequel trilogies. Even if those lessons were learned by the studio, Disney still does not know how to make a decent Star Wars movie. These movies are supposed to be carefully created with time spent planning and committing lots of thought to the story before releasing a finished product. This helps ensure good storytelling with character being the main component, and expanding the story that includes the entire Star Wars universe and then tying all of that together with bigger-than-life, high-explosive action. Had it been done right, the 3 movies could have been released with every other year to allow fans to salivate for the next episode, just like they did with weekly episodes of The Mandalorian. Let the fans enjoy each installment and savor it while they await the next episode, like you're marinating a chicken before each movie. This is like the cliffhanger endings for TV series back in the good old days when viewers were left jaw-dropped and could not wait the months they had to before the next episode aired. Kind of like when Best of Both Worlds happened. But to the main point, Disney has forgotten how to make movies, not because they cannot, but because they just do not understand which audience they are targeting. Is Star Wars meant for kids or adults? From what Disney has released lately, it's clear they don't know. Disney has lost the ability to read the minds of today's moviegoers. When George Lucas created the Star Wars A New Hope, it was clearly targeted at kids. He didn't even know he'd created a juggernaut of a movie franchise. Adults did not buy into Star Wars. It was their kids who dragged them to the theaters. Nope. I have to object to you. Object right away. That was not true. I was there. I saw Star Wars opening weekend. I was 10, and it was everyone went. Sure, kids wanted to see it. The commercials were irresistible, but so did adults. When word got out on how good the movie was, everyone flocked to see Star Wars. Everyone. It was a cultural event. It exploded like a bombshell. I mean, there were political op-eds that had pictures of Darth Vader next to the President of the United States. I mean, it was crazy. But anyway. However, the kids that turned into lifelong fans continues growing year after year. As fans, we have lapped up the remaining installments of the Star Wars saga. Mind you, these fans are also becoming older. A number of years passed since A New Hope debuted in 1977, and George Lucas decided to take the franchise to the next level and release the prequel trilogy. Honestly, if you leave out the silly Jar Jar Binks character and replace it with a real comedic actor or actress to play the jester, the older fans would have been more forgiving. In fact, the whole prequel trilogy would have been taken as serious, far more serious adult level fare. I think that the prequel trilogy it's just not well made. It's very stilted. I mean, it's not that, okay, I shouldn't say it's not well made. It's well made, but because of the limitations they had with what they were doing with digital set extensions and blue and green screen uh and it doesn't feel organic. There's not a lot of verisimilitude, and the verisimilitude falls down in the tone and the acting. The human characters are what suffer the most in the prequel trilogy, and I just don't think it works. But it's interesting how you're saying that it would have been more adult fare. Star Wars is for the kid and everybody. It always has been. And George Lucas might have thought he was making movies for kids, and I think he really did, but his collaborators made sure, whether it was Marcia Lucas and Richard Chew editing or Paul Hirsch, it was the fact that the Star Wars movies were made, the original trilogy was made for everybody. Everybody could enjoy it, parents and kids alike. But George wanted to earn more from the merchandise perspective. As a result, the prequels suffered from fan blowback due to Lucas's intention of attracting kids at the expense of the story and characters. I agree with that. Forgetting that the actual fans of the original trilogy had already grown up with kids of their own. Even kids are puzzled why their fathers are Star Wars fanatics. Events such as Comic-Con attest to it. In hindsight, George Lucas should have spent more time working with the actors and actresses in their performance around Darth Vader's story arc. I agree. Seriously, skip the parts where Jar Jar Binks appears, and the entire prequel trilogy is a solid bunch of films. That's true even if George Lucas is so finicky about the scene between Han and Greedo in the bar scene in A New Hope. Lucas should go back to the prequels and release a director's cut. I think we did get his director's cut. Editing out Jar Jar Binks and then re-releasing the edited film in theaters for a limited run and do service for those fans who hate The Phantom Menace. The Star Wars, the prequels without Jar Jar Binks. But here's the thing. You know, you're sort of contradicting yourself, because there are kids that love Jar Jar Binks. There are kids that grew up, you know, and The Phantom Menace was the first Star Wars movie they saw, and they loved it. They loved it. You might be surprised if Disney ever became so desperate as to recoup their investment of $4 billion by doing such a thing, given the dismal success of the last sequel. Well, I'm going to say that, to be fair, the last sequel has earned an estimated $495 million on a box office take of just over $1 billion, and that's not too bad. The Star Wars movies, let me keep going. Coming back to the present, though, Disney should have a solid Skywalker story with all the legacy characters in there, and then in the last two movies provide a proper salute to Han, Leia, Luke, Chewie in the Millennium Falcon. They could have passed the baton to Rey, Ben, and Poe in those second and third films. I agree. I've said that many times. Instead, all you see is one legacy character after another die in each episode. Han in the first, Luke in the second, and then Leia respectfully meets her end in the third. They are probably ghost characters now that will never haunt the Disney sequels. What should have been an opportunity to elevate Star Wars to the next level ended in a poor state of storytelling, even with the lessons learned from George Lucas. At the end of the day, a kid is a kid, a grown-up is a grown-up, and you have to know who your targeted audience is before you start filming your story. Love to hear your sentiments. Thanks. Best regards, Garth. Well, here's the thing. Like I said, I think Star Wars is a movie franchise for everyone. I mean, I really do. I honestly believe that is the case. And why shouldn't it be? And you know, kids' movies are fine, but you want movies. Walt Disney knew that his movies needed to appeal to everyone. I mean, you go back. One of my favorite fantasy films of all time is the original 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And that movie, while made by Disney, is very adult. It stars adults. There's no kids in it. And yet I loved it. I loved it when I first saw it as a kid. Rest in peace, Kirk Douglas, when he's singing Whale of a Tale. I mean, come on. Who didn't love that song when they were kids? And I never think, I've never understood, I guess, the infantilization that we have when kids are growing up. I mean, there was always kids' fare, but I always loved adult fare too. As a kid, I loved Outer Limits and Star Trek and Twilight Zone. And that was not because I was any different from any other kid. You know, I knew a lot of kids that liked the Twilight Zone. You come to school and you talk about what your favorite Twilight Zone episodes were. Kids, I remember telling those tales. Yeah, so I'm telling you. Jeffrey Mouse sent in a tip, by the way. Rob, I've been quiet since your return, and it's been hella busy at work, and I was sick, but I'm ready to get back into letter writing. I think I'm a bit written out, though. I need inspiration. It will come to me eventually. I missed the show and the Post-Geek Singularity. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. It's good to have you back. But yeah, I hope you're feeling better. We don't like people who are sick. That's never good. And let's see. Yet another. Oh, this is another Ian Samuels letter, which I actually love. And you know what? I'm going to read this because I have a great. Eagle Moss made a great. Well, let me read this letter so you know what I'm talking about. Rob, some interesting little-known Star Trek history. In Star Trek: The Motion Picture, there's a shot with photos of the ship named Enterprise, and these photos include an odd ship with large rings on the rear of the ship. If I was inside, I would pick that model up and show it to you. This is often simply referred to as the Ring Ship or the Ring Enterprise. The ship is, in fact, the USS Enterprise XCV-330. One of the reasons for its use in Star Trek: The Motion Picture is that it was an alternative design for the Enterprise in the original series, but not used. That is absolutely true. The Ring design is an early attempt by Starfleet to build a vessel of warp flight using the Vulcan technology. Vulcan ships have a large ring at the back of their ship, which is the equivalent of the warp nacelles. That's why the XCV-330 has the rings. Unfortunately, the engines only had, at best, 17% of the original Vulcan design. As a result, Starfleet decided the Vulcans were not being as forthcoming with their technological knowledge as originally hoped. That's why Henry Archer spent his life designing the Warp 5 engine, but due to delays from the Vulcans, he died before seeing his son, Jonathan Archer, prove that his engine design worked as it powered the NX-01 into space in Enterprise. Well, Ian, thank you for that quick history lesson. As I said, I have a great model of this. Also, Fantastic Plastic made a really 1/350 scale model of this. It's also great. If you go to this link, I'm putting it in the live chat. Check it out. There you go. The Richard sent in a super chat. Aloha, Rob. Thoughts on the award-winning short film George Lucas in Love? Well, how can you not love George Lucas in Love? I believe it was made at USC. For those of you who have not seen or heard of the short film George Lucas in Love, it is a short film that delves into how George Lucas came to make Star Wars and what inspirations did he take. And it's a delightful movie. I think it makes a great double feature with Ernie Fossilius' Hardware Wars. If you haven't seen Hardware Wars, how can you have not seen Hardware Wars? It's great. I used to have Warner Brothers released a videotape a long time ago in the early 80s that had Closet Encounters of the Nerd Kind, Start with Hardware Wars, Closet Encounters of the Nerd Kind, Bambi Meets Godzilla, and it had Pork Lips Now, Ernie Fossilius' follow-up to Hardware Wars, which was a Apocalypse Now parody that was awesome. So yeah, I'm a big fan of George Lucas in Love. It's really, really good. And it's really charming. It's really well made, too. It came out, of course, after Shakespeare in Love. It's good stuff. And I think that everybody should watch it. Let's see. More letters from you lovely folks. Oh, this is an interesting one. Let's see. I'll have to read this because it's about James Bond. And why shouldn't I? If it ever comes up. Technology isn't always as fast as you want it to be. This is interesting. This comes from Calvin Bowes. Of course, Calvin and his son. As you know, one thing I am, Rob, is a big 007 fan, and I wanted to give my thoughts on the 007 gun barrel sequence and rank the actors. Not by their portrayal of Bond in the films, but how they do the gun barrel. And of course, in the beginning of the Bond movies, the actor runs and then turns and fires, and then the blood comes down the rifled gun barrel. You're from inside, which I always thought was kind of a weird conceit even as a kid, but I loved it. And of course, they didn't make use of it in things like Casino Royale till like the end. or they played with it. I mean, it's finally in there now, but I love the gun barrel. Wow. So wow. Okay. So here is Calvin Bowes' rankings of the 7 actors playing Bond in the official Bond movies. Well, actually, the 6. This is very funny. Okay, Connery, number 7, the last on his list. Connery, although I feel he's the best Bond, I hate how he wobbles when he fires the gun. Wow. Number 6, Daniel Craig. He walks too fast, and I think the red wash looks cheap. You know what? I'm right there with you. Now they got all these digital tools, doesn't necessarily make it better. Brosnan, he looks too mechanical when he turns. Dalton at number 4, he's very natural when he turns. Roger Moore, number 3, he's the only actor using 2 hands, which is actually the correct way to fire the gun. Wow. George Lazenby, who was only in 1 Bond movie, at number 2. Lazenby at number 2. I think it's cool that he kneels as he fires. And number 1, who is the number 1 best actor, you ask? Bob Simmons. Bob Simmons, that's right. Sean Connery did not do the gun barrel shot in the first 3 films. Bob Simmons, who was a stunt double, did the shot in those films. I really like how he jumps before he fires. I think that's cool. So how would you rank these actors by their gun barrel marksmanship? Man, I think you right. It's amazing. I never thought of that. I mean, I knew about the Bob Simmons thing, but wow. He jumps before he fires. I got to check that out. I got to go back and watch. Now I'm going to sit down and have to do a Bond barrel analysis, I guess. How cool is that? We need that. We need more of that. We need more of that to happen. Wow. What a cool letter. Thanks for writing that one in. I didn't know that. That's good. I love it. Thank you. And let's see. This is a good one. Okay. This one comes from Devin Bell. Devin Bell writes in, hey, Rob, could you do a video on how to get into Star Trek for us that are uninitiated? I really enjoyed the Chris Pine run of movies. I've seen Star Trek The Wrath of Khan once and Star Trek Next Generation with Patrick Stewart, maybe some of the other TNG movies, but I'm not too sure. I'm definitely more of a Star Wars guy, but I love sci-fi and would like to be able to develop more of a love and appreciation for Star Trek. I appreciate you, bro. Thanks for being our viceroy of verisimilitude, Devin Bell. I get asked this question a lot, and I have to say that my answer is usually always the same, and my answer is you got to start from the beginning. Now, what I find really interesting now is, of course, it's very difficult. I've talked in this show a lot how it's very difficult to ask people to go back in time. I always say that pop culture has a half-life of 20 years for most people. And asking people to go back 20 years before they were born, for the most part, is a stretch. If you think about music and movies and things. So if you're born in 1980, asking people to go back to 1960 and before is a bit of a stretch. It's rough. Like, it doesn't matter what genre you're interested in. When you go back to the 50s, there was a monstrously large leap in pop culture from 1960 to 1980. Huge leap. I mean, think about the 20 years of rock and roll that occurred in that time. I mean, just off the top of my head, the Beatles, the Stones, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, all the album-oriented rock of the 70s like Styx and Journey and Foreigner. I mean, and then you get up to the Sex Pistols, and you get up to punk rock, and you get up to dance music and the synthesizer music, a band like the B-52s, and Joy Division and New Order and Depeche Mode and The Cure. It's a very interesting span. And I've always said that 20-year period is usually. So I understand if you're an audience member now and you say you like the the JJ movies and you've seen some older Star Trek films, I would always ask you to go back and watch the original series. Now, when you watch the original series, there is a big mistake that happened. That Star Trek famously had two pilots. It had its original pilot, The Cage, that was rejected, but they did something very interesting with that first pilot in the first season of the original series, and they made an episode, well, 2 episodes actually, called The Menagerie, Parts 1 and 2, that make use of the first pilot. So I always tell people, and I always tell people, don't watch The Cage first, because the way Star Trek developed, you have to watch The Cage within the context of The Menagerie to really to see it the way it developed first. Where I would tell you to go, if you look at any list of Star Trek, the actual real second pilot of Star Trek that Captain Kirk first appeared in was actually the 3rd episode of Star Trek aired. Why they made that decision, I don't know. The first episode that aired on September 8th, 1966, or in Canada a day before, or 2 days before, a day before, but in America it aired September 8th, 1966, was in fact The Man Trap. Don't watch The Man Trap first. Start with Where No Man Has Gone Before, and then work your way through the first season of Star Trek. And watch all the first season of Star Trek. Watch it all. You'll see many different diverse stories being told, and give it a chance. And if you love the first season, you'll love the second season, because the second season is great. The third season gets a little rough to watch. They replaced the producer with Fred Freiberger. They replaced Gene Roddenberry. But there's still a lot of good episodes. But that's where I would suggest starting. And when you watch it, look, I'll flat out say you can't just watch Star Trek and have it work for you. It won't. I mean, a lot of people just expect they can go back. The visual effects, which were not cheesy at the time, that show was very expensive. It was very well produced. No one had ever been shooting on a weekly basis, basically a huge ship model on a blue screen stage. It was state of the art. They did a lot of amazing things in the original Star Trek, but you got to go back and understand it was made from 1966 to 69. So if you go into it with that mindset and know what you're going to watch, is very different from the movie that the last J.J. Abrams film, or what you're seeing now with Discovery and Picard. It's just different. But if you go in with the mindset like, okay, I'm going to watch something that's now 54 years old, and put yourself in a different mindset, then I think you'll enjoy it. Concentrate on the characters. Concentrate on the story. You know, when you get to episodes like Errand of Mercy, or not the Doomsday Machine, that's season 2, or Arena, or the Corbomite Maneuver, or Balance of Terror, or City on the Edge of Forever, or Space Seed. You know, you're going to see some really great science fiction television. You really are. And yeah, I would definitely check it out. But that's how I would watch it. Rosetta Allen. Hello, Rosetta. I was on Rosetta's show last night. I had a lovely time for a couple hours on her podcast. Rosetta says, Star Trek always and forever before 2009. Yeah, well, I would agree. I absolutely agree with that. They've tried, since 2009, they've been trying to turn Star Trek into something else, which I guess I just don't really understand. You know, I don't get it. It doesn't work for me. But, you know, what can I do? This next one is interesting. It's close to my heart. This comes from Tommy Martinson. Tommy says, Rob, this year is the 10th anniversary of Tron Legacy, aka Tron 2, and on a recent rewatch, something came to me. This was Disney's attempt at reviving the Tron franchise and making it the next big franchise. I couldn't help but compare it to their management of Star Wars, and especially how they decided to revive it with The Force Awakens. Tron 2 is a soft reboot in disguise, just like Star Wars The Force Awakens, but in my opinion, Tron 2 did it correctly, while Force Awakens did not. Tron 2 builds its story on the original film and respects what we saw and understood from Tron, but it tells a completely new story, simply set in the world of the original, and brings back some original characters. In my opinion, The Force Awakens did not build on or respect what came before. If anything, it basically threw out the ending of Star Wars Return of the Jedi as if it never happened, and instead reset the galaxy back to the status quo from Star Wars A New Hope. The story told in The Force Awakens was just a rehash of A New Hope, plot point by plot point. Even returning the characters from the original trilogy weren't interesting because it seemed as if they'd been stuck in time, not changed at all, and they had no real character arcs. In Tron 2, however, Kevin Flynn, who is the main character of Tron, again played by Jeff Bridges, is a drastically different person than when we last met him, but he's still Kevin Flynn. Age, experience, and circumstance changed him in the 30 years since the preceding movie, and even though he's a supporting character in Tron 2, the movie did a great job of continuing his story and making him the heart of the movie before fully passing the torch on the new characters at the end. Over the years, I've always been frustrated that we didn't get more Tron movies and curious what Disney had in mind for the story. That's how I break down what worked and what didn't work between Tron 2 and The Force Awakens for me. After The Force Awakens, I really wasn't curious or optimistic about the future of the sequel trilogy, but after Tron 2 I was. 10 years later, I'm still bummed out that we didn't get more. But we did get at least 19 episodes of a great animated series. Was that Tron Uprising, right? Tommy M. Well, Tommy, you know me. I have a great soft spot in my heart for Tron. I made a feature-length documentary about the making of Tron that was on the, well, it's on the Blu-ray. You can check it out if you get the Tron Blu-ray. You can watch my documentary. And I was a big fan. And that just, I liked Tron Legacy. It was okay. I mean, I love Daft Punk's score. I love the way it looked. But I thought the thing that was disappointing to me most about Tron is when the original Tron came out in 82, we had no way of knowing the home computer, laptops, all of that desktop computing was new, the Apple IIc or whatever. No one could have predicted, well, maybe somebody could have predicted, but where we went as a culture because of the internet and because of computers. And I felt the one thing about Tron 2 that I felt really disappointed in was it had really not a whole lot to say about our civilization and how it had been changed, because in Tron 2 there was just the grid. And that was it. It wasn't connected to the world at large. And I thought that was sort of a mistake. I mean, it limited the scope of the story, obviously, but I don't know how I was just a little disappointed. I thought the lack of commentary about where we've come in terms of the internet was lacking from the film, which kind of bummed me out. So, but I mean, a good letter. Wow, that ice is really cold. My water is really cold. But I wanted to, I wanted to read that and say, I like Tron a lot. And there's no other movie that looks like Tron. You go and you look at fantasy films because the combination of hand-painted animation, like in Tron, when you see all the live action stuff, all of that was hand-painted. I mean, if you look at my documentary, what they did was they blew up the 70 millimeter film frames and made codoliths out of them, and then painted the codoliths and then used them as animation cells. It was really crazy what they did. And so whenever you're looking at live action stuff, it's not CG, it's black and white film, 70 millimeter film that was blown up, or 65 millimeter film, blown up, put on an animation stand, and photographed like animation was. And it's pretty amazing. It's really amazing, actually. And yeah. But I agree. I think it's great.